I'm Josh Hager, President of the Bismarck School Board. It's 5:15 on Monday, January 12th. I call this meeting to order. Welcome to those of you who are joining us both here and also online. You can find our agenda and follow along under the School Board tab at bismarckschools.org. Dr. Scher, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hager?
Here.
Mr. Eastgate?
Here.
Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mrs. Peterson?
Here.
Ms. Presky?
Here.
All board members are here. Dr. Frostnall, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1C is the BPS mission, vision, and values. The BPS mission is to empower every learner to thrive. The BPS vision states, together our relationships build inclusive, collaborative, and innovative environments that create agency and inspire a passion for learning, excellence, and discovery. The BPS values are inclusion, excellence, innovation, and leadership. You'll also find a link in the agenda to the BPS strategic plan. Item 2 is to adopt the agenda. What are the wishes of the board?
President Hager, I would move that we adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Scher.
Eastgate?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Presky?
Yes.
Hager?
Yes. Motion passes. Item 3, focus on success, the K-12 Learning Academy. Exciting. Dr. Frostnall.
Good afternoon, board members. Nice to see you again. We have a little kind of a little gaggle of educators and a parent who would like to talk to you about the Virtual Academy. We'd like to share not only with you, but our listening public, a little bit about the first year, half a year of our K-8 Virtual Academy that's off the ground, which we've talked about before. So we're going to give you a little background on that and how it's doing, but then talk about what we'd like to do operationally to expand that into the 9 through 12 realm and some of the benefits of doing that. So I'd like to bring the podium and introduce to you Ms. Amanda Meyer.
Good evening, President Hager, members of the board. We're going to start this evening with what we've done so far, and then I will turn it over and we'll talk about what the expansion plans are. So Mr. Barnhart is going to share our purpose and mission and vision, and I'm not going to read this, but if you have the time to read it, it really says that we are trying to extend what is currently happening within BPS and ensure that the mission of empowering every learner to thrive also occurs in this virtual setting. On the next slide, we just want to give you a little background on why did we start the pilot. So the first reason is we've had some success with other personalized programs. A few that you're familiar with is Empowered Ed and Renew Ed. And so we really leaned on what parts of that model work well for that subset of students, and then how can we use that to inform the work that we were embarking on last February. The second reason is that the technology is advancing, and so the ability to have blended and hybrid experiences has improved greatly since our first experience during COVID. And so we want to lean on that opportunity to advance personalization. And the next reason is we have a growing homeschool family. We have families that want to be the lead learner in their child's education, and we don't think they should have to choose between a public school education and homeschool. We want to be a partner in that. And finally, we want to continue to serve our family. I got a few calls over the course of last spring asking what are my other options, and we wanted to increase the pathways for families. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that means on the next slide. Oh, before we do that, apologize. I just want to highlight the current team. So as we were starting to have this conversation, we wanted to be as fiscally responsible as possible. And so all the people you see here had different roles last year and kindly agreed to take on this journey so that we could keep costs at a minimum. So I do want to just highlight and express my gratitude to the amazing ladies sitting over here that took on this work to little to no cost to BPS. So we have Kate is our 6-8 teacher. Ivy Rath is our K-5 teacher. The LDI secretary took on all of the school secretary principal support roles. And we also have the LMO secretary that supported the families in their curricular needs. And then finally, Misty was our lead curricular support, and I just appreciate her willingness to add that portfolio last February. And now the pathways, so I apologize. So we started by partnering with Mandan and Fargo, to find out what they were currently doing because they both had longstanding success since COVID. And so we partnered with both of those school districts, and then we really looked at what was important to BPS. And what we landed on was having a very traditional pathway, trying to keep it as familiar to what currently is experienced in brick and mortar. We wanted a self-paced pathway, which would provide more flexibility for kids that just wanted to get on, be able to do it at their own pace, and still be able to check in with the teacher. And then finally, that most open-ended was the personalized pathway. So really leaning into competency-based for families that were ready to explore that. And the coolest part that our team came up with is that families could pick per content area. And so if there was a learner that wanted to be self-paced for math because that was potentially a strength area, they didn't want as much partnership with a teacher, they could be self-paced for math, and then they could be in a traditional setting for ELA, for social studies, for science. And so they really had options. They didn't have to go all or nothing, which created some extra logistical things, but it also really met the need of what families were asking for. On the next slide, this is another component I wanted to highlight is a lot of times we hear virtual and we think a student is on a computer all day long. That was a priority for us to not have that be true, especially for our littlest learners. And so they all received a kit with hands-on materials, manipulatives, workbooks, in addition to the subscriptions and access to anything that a student would have within BPS so that they could spend the important time on the computer with the teacher, but also then be able to do their independent learning off of the device. And this is the other highlight of the program is we wanted to keep a connection. I think that's what makes this so cool is it's by BPS, for BPS, within BPS. And so we have learners coming in to our site and doing learning days hands-on with their other classmates. And we're going off-site to use community resources. So an example would be the Powwow, Gateway to Science, the Art Center, similar to field trips, but we're really targeting some of the standards that are difficult to meet in a virtual setting through those Leave to Learn experiences and learning days. And the last slide here is our current enrollment. So the vision to pilot was to try to find 12 families that were interested in doing this with us. And as of today, today's the start of the new semester, we have 44 families enrolled. And I did highlight there the 8th grade number because that's going to take us right into our next conversation. We have 16 8th graders currently enrolled with us, which means we need to be thinking about what 9th grade is going to look like for those learners next year. And so I do have Mr. Calvoda and Ms. Frink here, and they're going to talk about the 912 expansion, and then we'll come back together and answer any questions that you might have.
President Hager, members of the board. So South Central's component of this is to provide academic support through curricular specialties, particularly the core specialties, so my math, science, social studies, English, as well as I believe this physical education component. So my staff is going to stand to help out students who are working on their curricular and they have trouble with a certain content area. They will have time set aside in their day when they will be able to go online and have a meeting with students to give them the support that they need. I will be there as the administrator, and we have a 1.0 person that's going to be hired, a teacher, much like you have for the middle school and the elementary part of it. We'll have a high school person that's going to be like a coordinator teacher position. There's also an additional 1.0 FTE if additional academic support is needed, but to begin with, we'll rely on the South Central staff to do that, depending on demand and depending on need, and then support from my administrative assistant as well as my counselor. So that's our component for the program. Misty? Oh, Steve's here.
Looks like I got here just in time. This slide talks a little bit about the breadth of the curriculum. And so a student enrolled in the virtual high school will be able to get all the credits necessary for graduation. Now, with that said, it's not going to have all of the offerings that we have in-person learning. You know, a student isn't going to learn to swing a hammer behind a keyboard. And so there's a lot of our elective offerings that wouldn't be involved in the virtual program. So what we would have the ability to do is for those students who are enrolled as a virtual student to be able to access our in-person. So if they want to take our musics or our career academy classes or some of those upper-level languages are really difficult without the conversational piece in some of our world languages. And so those will be offered AP and dual credit because of some of the certifications that go along with that. They will not be offered on virtual programming. And then as far as students still being engaged with some of our student support services, those will still be offered. And then if students want to engage in our extracurricular programming, they'll be eligible to do that just based on their boundary school.
And we do have a current parent here this evening, so I'm going to invite her to come up and just share a little bit about her experience, and then we'll go over the recommendations for next year. So come on over.
Hi, I'm Carly Vennis. I am a mom. I've got 3 kids enrolled in Virtual Academy. I have a 5th grader, a 7th grader, and an 8th grader. So I'm one of the parents who has an 8th grader who is looking into next year as well. So I have always homeschooled my kids for various reasons, mostly needing flexibility because of medical issues that we have. So when Virtual Academy, I got the little flyer in the mail. I think I called pretty much right away after I got that flyer just to see what it was all about. And it was very much what we were looking for. I have kids in just about all of the pathways too. Sorry to Mrs. Rath and Mrs. Ski. My bad. And I have kids that need additional supports as well, and they've been wonderful about helping us through all of that. So we've just been really, really thankful as a family for Virtual Academy being able to have access to really quality education for our kids. I don't have to be the teacher. I am so thankful for Mrs. Rath and Mrs. Ski. They are incredible for my kids, and my kids are really thriving under them as well. I should have brought my 5th grader. I was going to bring my 5th grader, but he ended up sick because he wanted to just say how much he really loves doing school with Mrs. Rath. So he has really just blossomed and thrived. I've also really appreciated this year has definitely been a learning year, I think, for all of us. And their flexibility has been amazing. Just their ability to adapt to what the kids need. That's been really, really great. Even doing curriculum changes, we started out with for my 8th grader, he was all Ingenuity, and now he's not going to be any Ingenuity. So just being able to adapt to what he needs has been really, really great as well. And I guess, I really hope this program just continues to thrive because it's really been wonderful for our family. Because of the ages of my kids, I really hope there's high school next year. I have a current high schooler that she would have loved to have been a part of Virtual Academy. So thank you.
A couple other examples that I want to share before we finish is in addition to families like the Venices, we have families that are currently in Pakistan that we are serving. We have families whose student is receiving cancer care and can't be in a school that we're able to serve. And I just want to finish this evening before we talk about numbers, just really talking about how the partnerships with our current buildings have been amazing. So shout out to all 3 middle schools. We have students that are in the Virtual Academy but are remote enrolled in AVID or peer-to-peer or orchestra. And we could not do this. We could not have the success that we've had if it wasn't a all hands on deck partnership. So just really thankful to our middle school principals, our elementary principals who have students that we're sharing. It's just been really appreciated and collaborative. And so with that, we have the funding here, and Dr. Fashnot promised that he would take over from here. But we'll stand for any questions at the end.
don't trust the LDI with the numbers. No, that's what it heard from there. No, thank you, Amanda, and we'll come back to you. Just giving you a really rough budget, just trying to let you see what the costs are. That is total programs, so some of that you've already invested in. It's not all new dollars, but we're trying to reflect some of the new 9 through 12 faculty in there. As Mr. Calvoda said, one of the FTEs that's reflected in the budget isn't going to be hired right away. We don't need it right away, but as we expand, I think we just need to be aware of that and just kind of planning ahead that if that becomes as popular as what we've rolled out this last year, we might need some additional capacity. So with that said, if you go to the revenue side, all this is, as Mrs. Meyer said last year, is like you get 12 kids in the program, we can make this fund, and we can, particularly if we are deferring kids who are leaving our system and going to home education or picking another option, if we can retain those, that helps fund it. So if you go to the next page, Mr. Barnhart, if you look at funding for next year from the state, it's $11,633, 44 kids presently in our K-8 program. You look at what that projected present funding is. Again, if you look at the $599 at the top, and again, that's reflective of another teacher that we're not going to hire. So I think we're pretty even right now. I was optimistically, aggressively telling Mrs. Meyer that you need about 8 kids. Well, as she said, I think those are sitting in 8th grade right now. We have that enrollment coming. It's building for the future, and I think we can leverage those 8th graders coming up to help support the program and implement it and provide some of the options that we are now to these families, as the examples that was given at the podium, to our 9 through 12 families. And you've heard this before. I mean, you get that open enrollment report. I think you got that this last fall with the number of kids that are attending Yellowstone. Yellowstone is a virtual option that's out of district, that is in Yellowstone, North Dakota. We think, why are we sending 27 kids to Yellowstone product? That's really what we can now offer and give you hands-on learning, use our resources, use our expertise. Go to our libraries, go to our learning facilities to help support you. Seems like an instant win for families. And I think what Mrs. Meyer led with is a growing number of home-educated families that we know some are making, they're all making a great choice, it's parent choice, but some of them want some support. And I think that's what I applaud the program that's been built by Mrs. Meyer and her team, is they brought those families in to help craft the program to meet their needs. And if we can help support those families, our job is to support the education of kids wherever they are. Doesn't matter if they're in my building or in town, we're here to support them. And if we can, that's the heart of the work we're doing. So if you'd have any questions, I'll stand for any, or we'll bring whoever back to the podium for you.
Board members, questions, comments? Ms. Peterson.
I do have one question. I think my first one is for Dr. Fosnap, but my second is for the parent. My first question is, in the way that the enrollments work, so let's say you get 8 students now, you know that you're going to get it. In what degree do you have to have these students enrolled beforehand where you can make decisions, or is it they can enroll at any time during the school year? I know that that's kind of been a little bit fluid. So like as long as you would get 8 to roll with the program, are you able to grow and flex throughout the school year to adapt, or would you have to cut it off?
I think all those answers are accurate.
Yeah, okay.
I can speak
We
to-
started with enrollments right away. We have created enrollment windows because it can't happen every day. But we've also, I know Ms. Myers come to me and said, we can't take any more. We're at a staffing line where we can't expand. But in another enrollment window, if we can project, we know we can ramp up staff if we knew there was going to be an enrollment growth. So I think everything you said is probably accurate. So.
Amanda, anything?
The only thing I would add is the sooner we know this spring, then the better we can prepare for the 26-27 school year. What Dr. Foshnot said is true. This year we've been on the fly. It would be nice to have enrollments by May so staffing could be ready in the fall, but we are using those windows to help project as well.
Excellent. President Hager, can I continue? I think I have a one question for Ms. Venice. Is it Venice or Venice? Okay, thank you. So good to hear your family experience. And I just wanted you, I know that earlier on in the presentation, Dr. Meyer talked a little bit about the learning kits and the curriculum, and you even spoke a little bit about how you guys are kind of adding those components within it. Just wondering, how could you speak to like maybe how the kits supported your learning, or if your children do some of that on-site, off-site extracurriculars, like how do you take advantage of some of that, those different school building engagements, or if you do?
So my kids have not done anything at like their local elementary or middle school. As of right now, they will. My youngest, especially, he'll do sports next year. My middle schoolers haven't they're not really sports kids, but also they have a lot of medical needs. So that takes up a lot of our time.
Absolutely.
But they do. Thank you. Yes, they do. They do have learning days that they participate in. And the cool thing about that is my kids have made new friends just in the virtual academy. So, I mean, they've had, I think my middle school boys would cringe if I said this word, but they basically have like play dates with their friends now outside of it. And so, and they, they have each other's numbers and they talk and they do, regular middle school boy things. So, I mean, that's been really, really great. So,
Thank you so much.
Mr. Eastgate.
Thanks, President Hager. Ms. Meyer and the team, thanks everybody for presenting. I don't have a question right now yet, Amanda, but I might. As you recall, I did the school visit last year at the central office building, and this first came up, and so I just wanted to put a voice to it again. As you know, we didn't argue about it, but I'm a big proponent of in-person education, and I just want to make sure we state that, because as we talk about virtual learning, I think sometimes I can get confused. But as you've educated me on this, and I heard Mr. Calvoda talk about it earlier today at a separate meeting, I like to see what BPS is doing with it, and the fact that the way I was putting it down, we've had some things with Renew Ed, behavioral, when there's instances where a student can't be in the classroom. And then it was really fun for me to hear from Ms. Venice, so thank you for being willing to be here tonight and field questions and everything, because obviously from your kids' experience, it's allowed them. You said that he wanted to be here to say hi to his teacher. Like there's a connection made there. There's that mentoring opportunity that's going on beyond just the 2 + 2 = 4, which I always think is what makes in-person in-class teaching so great. And I'm glad that that's still happening, even through a virtual academy. I think the biggest thing that I look at it is that the virtual academy for us, I hope, is always a complement, a supplement, and not a replacement. And that's what I'm hearing is going on. So for me, I look at it as a positive thing for our district to continue to serve our greater community.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. I do have 2 children in BPS, and so we did start this last year saying we're not competing with the excellent program that we already have. And I just want to compliment Mr. Madler and Mr. Calvoda as they talked about the high school side. This is in addition to the excellent programming that we already have, and so it's not saying that this way is better than another way. It's giving families more options to educate their children. So thank you for saying that.
Mr. Lee.
Thank you, President Hager. So it kind of hit me when Mr. Eastgate was talking, and I love this program. I think there's a lot of great things about it. I think there's many reasons why people homeschool their kids, and I think there's many resources we as a district can provide to them, and that can add incredible value, right, to parents and to kids. And it looks to me like when I do the quick math, the per pupil funding kind of adds up to about what it is in district, which I think is important, that we're not spending more on this than we do our general ed. So the big thing I took from Mr. Eastgate was, I've always talked about this, and I'm kind of a broken record, but I see a real strong need in Renew Ed and kids who can't self-regulate or probably shouldn't be in our buildings. I think we need to make sure that there's an understanding that it's a privilege to be in our schools every day, and there is an expectation for how kids act. So there are behaviors, we know that. Are you taking Renew Ed students through the virtual academy or any behaviors?
At this time, we are parent choice, and so we would certainly partner with a parent if that was the choice that they wanted to make, but we're not making referrals into the virtual academy unless a parent thinks it's the right fit for their child.
Okay, and just to get your take on this, would there ever be a time where this would be appropriate for, as a referral?
I do believe through our SAT process, if a school had been working with a family and this was maybe identified as an intervention, that we would be willing to partner, come up to the table and decide if it's a good fit. But I think that that parent plays a huge role in making sure, because there is a commitment level, as you heard from Ms. Venice, that the parent has to feel successful
Yeah.
with that environment.
And obviously, that commitment is unable to be met by a number of our parents, really. So it would be on a case-by-case basis.
Right, and Renew Ed would certainly have better resources, and so I would love to partner if that got to a point where they felt like this was a best fit as an intervention.
Okay, yeah. All right, thank you for that. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for letting us come, and thank you to all of you for taking time out of your evening.
Ms. Prisky?
Yeah, I'm curious if we expand this to high school, how that might affect the population at South Central. Will we see maybe a decrease in students that will go through that avenue and opt for the virtual academy instead? What are your thoughts on that?
Mr. Calvoda is going to come back.
So obviously this is an unknown. We don't know exactly what. I think talking to my counterparts in other parts of the state who have virtual academies in place, there will be some effect to it. But I think there's also the possibility that having South Central staff connecting with those students and seeing the opportunity that maybe they would like to at some point come to South Central because of the different environment. It is much more of like a homeschool environment to draw some of those students to come to our school as well. So it's really an unknown at this point. We'll wait and see, but we'll support them either way.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Meyer and team for coming again. Ms. Meyer is becoming frequent. We're gonna get you a punch card for all the times you're here. Yeah. So thank you all for coming. This is, as it's been, touched on here, kind of an exciting time to kind of see this kind of developing and rolling out over time. So thank you all for presenting and sharing this information. Item 4 is public comment. The board recognizes the central role parents play in the education of their children and supports active parent involvement in the education process. The board's practice of public comment reflects and aligns with policy BCBA and the spirit of its intent. For classroom issues, it's best to follow the chain of command: teacher, principal, assistant superintendent, superintendent. For district issues, please reach out to Dr. Fosnot. If you do speak tonight, we simply ask that you be responsible, be helpful, and be respectful. Our BPS students deserve to have adults model the expectations that we have for them. Groups are urged to select one spokesperson. Individuals will be limited to no more than 4 minutes and will be notified with 30 seconds remaining to conclude their remarks. The board will not debate issues as presented, but will take such matters under advisement. With that, please stand and approach the podium if you do wish to speak tonight. Please state your name and the agenda item that you will be speaking about.
Good evening, Chairman and Board. Be honest with you, I didn't plan on speaking tonight, but I do see that you have transportation listed twice on the agenda. So I wanted to share my experience this year a little bit and give you some perspective, because I'll be honest with you, we've been using the transportation option, the busing option through BPS for over 10 years. And I have had confidence, I've had trust in Harlow's for that service. I mean, at one point, me and my wife would leave our kids at home, and we had faith while we were at our jobs that the bus was going to drop them off and pick them up. I can tell you this year, I do not have that confidence. I do not have that trust in the system. My son actually was supposed to ride the bus this morning, and he ended up watching the bus drive by twice. Luckily, my wife was at the side of the road with him, and we did not have inclement weather. It was a gorgeous morning for this mishap, so I guess something good came of it. But the reason I am at the board meeting tonight, I will be in full transparency. I have reached out to Dr. Fosnach. We have discussed my concerns. I am here tonight because you guys are elected officials, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, because I do say this quite often, but you represent the people, and Dr. Fosnach does not. So I am here tonight asking you to get your hands involved in this. And I do understand how coherent governance works, and that you guys govern through policy. But I would like to point out, several years ago, you guys adopted the school board visit program that you guys all attend. I personally think it's been a great program. It gives you guys a perspective on what is actually happening in our schools. It gives you an opportunity to talk to staff, and it gives you a different perspective than just sitting at this table and hearing it somewhat secondhand. So I guess I'm here tonight to ask you guys, with our busing dilemma that we have, would you guys, and I understand you're busy, y'all got lives outside of this board, but I would think that it would be in the board's best benefit to take an opportunity to ride these buses, so that you gain not only a perspective for what our drivers deal with on a daily basis, some of the behavioral issues you can maybe see, but you can also see how these routes are run. You can see capacities, because that's another concern I have. We went from a bus route that was full. My only complaint over the last 10 years would be that there wasn't enough seats for children on buses and that they were sitting in the aisles. And now I'm told from neighborhood kids and my own child that there's 6 to 8 kids riding a bus. Miles equal dollars. We are still paying for those miles, whether there's 20 kids or 1 kid. So I would question the fiscal responsibility of this current system also. But like I said, my main purpose tonight is to let you guys know that I think there's concerns that aren't being addressed. And I think as board members, you guys have a responsibility to the public to seek those perspectives. So I would ask you to maybe model after the school visit deal that you guys have done, and maybe get on these buses, take some time out of the day and, ride a morning route or ride an afternoon route and, gain some perspective, because we are having a problem finding bus drivers. Nobody's going to deny that. It's a staffing problem as part of the equation. Find out, what do our drivers like? What do they dislike? What is you as a board can do to support the superintendent in that hiring process?
30 seconds.
We all have to be involved, whether it's from a parent aspect, whether it's from an administration aspect, or a board aspect. So I ask you to please consider that. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else wish to speak tonight? Okay, seeing nobody else, public comment is now closed. Takes us down to item 5, monitoring district operations. So we are tonight having a public reading of GC7 Board Members Code of Conduct. So this will be the public reading of GC7. It's a lengthy one. The board and its members will conduct themselves lawfully with integrity and high ethical standards in order to model the behaviors expected of staff and students and to build public confidence and credibility. 1. Board members will serve the interests of the citizens of the entire school district. Members recognize this responsibility to the whole to be greater than any loyalty a member may have to any other advocacy or interest groups. B, loyalty based upon membership on other boards or staffs. C, conflicts based upon the personal interest of any board member who is also a parent of a student in the district. D, conflicts based upon being a relative of an employee of the district. 2, board members will not exercise individual authority over the organization. A, members will not assume personal responsibility for resolving operational problems or complaints. Complaints will be referred to the superintendent for investigation and resolution. B, members will not attempt to personally direct any part of the operational organization. C, when speaking to the press or otherwise publicly sharing personal opinions, members will respect decisions of the board and will not undermine those decisions. D, members will not publicly express individual negative judgments about the superintendent or staff performance. 3, to build public trust among members and to ensure the environment conducive to effective governance, members will A, focus on issues rather than personalities. B, respect decisions of the full board. C, exercise honesty in all written and interpersonal interactions, never intentionally misleading or misinforming each other. D, criticize privately, praise publicly. E, make every reasonable effort to protect the integrity and promote the positive image of the district and one another. F, never embarrass each other or the district. 4, members will exercise personal discipline in the performance of their duties, including proper use of authority and appropriate decorum when acting as a board member. 5, members will maintain confidentiality appropriate to sensitive issues and information that otherwise may tend to compromise the integrity or legal standing of the board, especially those matters discussed in executive session. That concludes the reading of GC 7. Ms. Presky.
I would move that we retain GC 7 Board Members Code of Conduct.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Scher.
Lee,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Presky,
Yes.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. Now I would look for a motion to determine if we're in compliance with exception, or out of compliance. Ms. Presky.
I would move that we are in compliance.
And I would second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Scher.
Peterson,
Yes.
Presky,
Yes.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. Item 6, matters reserved for board action. School board regular meeting schedule. Dr. Fosnap.
Just presenting this, Ms. Estabrook got this ready for you. If you're willing to accept these dates for projected next year, you just need to accept them and approve them.
Ms. Presky.
Yeah, just following up on like last year's issues that came about right around the start of the school year, I guess I would like to suggest us having a meeting closer to or right after the start of school, just so that there's not that lapse in time to, I guess, publicly address anything that arises with the start of school. And maybe that could mean a shift in another month or whatever to add those 2 dates in August, or changing the 1 August meeting to later on, closer to the school year.
Any other thoughts, comments?
President Hager, I agree with Ms. Presky in the sense that this last year in particular, with a lot of changes happening, it definitely would have helped to have had one, right at the start, basically. After the first week even, I'm not sure. But I don't know what that looks like, if we're able to make that pivot right away tonight or not, or if there's a proposed date that would make sense.
If you'd like in your motion to accept these dates with the directive to go find a second date in August, we can go back and it'll involve us looking at our school calendar and then also contacting City County Building to see availability of the room, but we can do that, yes.
Mr. Lee.
Thank you, President Hager. I'm not opposed to that idea at all. I don't think I would be necessarily for a second meeting if you kind of go back and look at our summers. I mean, it's pretty dead, but a date that's closer to the start of school or shortly after, I would be in favor of. So I guess that would put it at, the 17th or the 24th. Just my thoughts.
So we have some comments, thoughts, motion around what you guys would like to see. Mr. Lee.
President Hager, I would make the motion that we approve the scheduled meetings as presented, with the directive to the superintendent to look at that August date and possibly come back with another date to move that meeting to.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Scher.
Presky,
Yes.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. Item B, the transportation service contract. Dr. Scher is getting up, so I assume he's got this one.
President Hager, members of the board, thanks for listening tonight. The thing that's interesting is, can't move that first meeting in August, because that's the first time that thing's lined up with our what we have to do for our budget for like ever. So we're leaving that one. So we don't have to have a special call-in meeting for that. That can truly be at a board meeting to approve our preliminary budget. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the process for the new transportation contract. I've been in the district 20 years. I rode the bus. I mean, we've been partners with Harlow's for many, many years. And just for the record, I was never kicked off the bus. So, but I want to talk a little bit about the process. We did issue an RFP. We had 3 firms that had submitted proposals, and what we were looking for in there is we had it 60% based on price, 20% based on fleet, 10% based on enhancements that they could bring to the district, and then 10% on references. So I will tell you, in all those categories, Harlow's came out at the end ranking the highest. They are the lowest cost. Half of their fleet will be 2027 buses for next year. So reliability would increase because we just have a newer fleet. The remaining half still have to meet criteria to be fairly new also. The other thing that we're really excited about, and we've been doing some actually pilots this, I don't know, is this winter still probably, is some of the enhancements that they'll bring to the table is we'll have tablets on the bus that will allow for navigation, attendance, which is something that we have to try to get a better handle on, of the riders and then the non-riders, registered versus riders, and then tracking. We think those will be great enhancements to the process. I do want to point out that Ken and Vanessa from Harlow's are here, so ask really hard questions because they're going to help. So our recommendation is that we would enter into the next 4-year contract with Harlow's.
Ms. Presky.
Can you tell me what the increase is, I guess, in this contract versus what we had from our previous contract?
Sure. So we broke actually the scoring out in a couple different phases because we use them for gen ed transportation. We use them for our Career Academy shuttles, and we also use them for field trips and activities. So the total when we lump those all together is $650,000. So part of that is gen ed, part of it's the Career Academy runs. It's split like 450, 200, or maybe it's 400, 250. I don't remember right off the top of my head.
And just for clarification, 650 is the total contract, or that's the
That's
increase?
the increase over this year. Remember, we're at about 3.3, so we're going up to about 4.1. Yeah. And that actually was included in your budget projection under professional services, so we have that accounted for in the budget projection.
Mr. Lee.
Thank you, President Hager. Is there flexibility? It's a 4-year contract. Is there flexibility that where a future board can pivot if they need to reduce routes?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah,
Or-
I think that would be
yep.
important, that they
Yep.
still have even though it's a contract, there's flexibility to work with Harlow's on what the busing looks like for the following year.
Correct. And we're working out the details of the contract, but that always is an option for a couple reasons. One is change in operations allows it. Also, non-appropriation of funds would allow it too. Let's say for some reason, who knows, right, that we just don't have the funds anymore, we could eliminate transportation.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Peterson.
President Hager, thank you. And then Dr. Scher, I think that it was good to hear in terms of this contract. I know it came out in our workshop last week, especially about some of the things and some of the experiences, and it's going to come out in some of the recommendations that Dr. Fosnat and the Operational Excellence Committee, but appreciate in this new contract that what you just said about the fleet and about the just technological improvements that just happen over long term in terms of facilities. So I really appreciate the conversation about half that fleet being new buses that would allow us the technological advances to do some of the things that I know a lot of our families are really talking about in terms of wanting to know where their bus is and where their kids are at different times, and some of the ridership and some of the other issues that I know came up not only this year but in past years, to make sure that we are being really efficient with not only these dollars but in the future. So with that, I really think that this contract, especially in light of the questions that Mr. Lee just asked you in terms of making kind of like a 4-year contract, but like a 1-year budget decision based on kind of what we know right now versus what we might know with operations in the future is extremely helpful. So I guess that really wasn't a question, but just an acknowledgement of the work that was put into the contract and the questions that come in, plus with what we talked about at the workshop and the budget projections all being kind of one conversation, even though I know on this agenda it's like 2 or 3 different conversations.
President Hager,
Sure.
I forgot to mention this because I think this is really important that we had a committee go through and look at the numbers. We prepared the financials for the group, but we had 2 school principals on that committee. We had a parent on that committee, and we did update operational excellence too, that this would be our recommendation. So I feel like we had a lot of involvement with not only our system, but even with the parent rep, so.
Board members, any, Mr. Lee?
President Hager, with that, I would move that we award the full year 2027 to full year 2030 student transportation services contract to Harlow's Bus Service effective July 1st, 2026.
And I would second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Dr. Scher?
Eastgate,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Presky,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. Item C, board member school visits. I think polling ahead of time, I'm the only one who has one tonight, and my apologies, this might be a little bit of a lengthy one. So a month ago, I had the privilege to go down to Solheim for a school visit. So full disclaimer, I was a Solheim student many years ago. In fact, if Ms. Swanson and Mr. Hansel are watching, I was able to track myself down in the photo that's on the wall by going to Barnes & Noble and talking to my first grade teacher at the time. We were able to figure out which little head was mine. So being a Solheim student back in the day, and then further having had my kids now go through there. So I've been a Solheim parent. I did the math quick, 11 years now, and I still have one that's there now. Extended family as well. I've got a number of nieces and nephews that are there, and the youngest being a kindergartner. So I'll have family at Solheim for a while to come. It's a wonderful little school. I know Miss Peterson lived down that neighborhood, and her kids went there too. So thank you first to Miss Swanson for the time she gave me. I was with her for almost 2 hours that day. I mean, we saw a lot. So one of the things that I really wanted to see is the stuff that we've been hearing about the spacing constraints and the issues that they have at Solheim. With the number of students, considering now we've got 4 portables out there. So this visit gave me the opportunity to do that, and it started really with lunch. So we walked into the gym just prior to lunch starting. So there's 2 Phi Ed classes going on at once, sharing that gym space. So 2 teachers, 2 Phi Ed classes. My son was one of them that happened to be in the gym at the time, so I saw him running around. And then the number of custodians that were standing around the side with hands on tables. And the second the gym class ended, it was like clockwork. Tables were going out. It was a well-oiled machine. Watching the way that they put things out and got things set up within minutes so that those kids could have lunch. The gym classes exited, place got set up, just clockwork. Having not an individual space for lunch means, gym classes have to shut down to that period of time. One of the other things that I didn't fully appreciate was talking about the scheduling, and Ms. Swanson was talking about trying to get the teachers their opportunities for their PLCs and how you have to try to stack these music classes with these gym classes and try to get everything just right to allow them that time, and how the scheduling component is difficult at times. So we're in the gym, boom, set up like a lunchroom, and in walk the kids. I mean, it's like military precision watching the way that things operated. It was fun seeing Mr. Porter, the former gym teacher, was substituting that day, not as a gym teacher, but he was running lunchroom duty, checking kids in for lunch. So it's fun to see him again. So the organization really was amazing, watching one class come in, eat lunch, get up, exit to go outside, the whole time as well. So there's used to be a janitorial space that was living quarters that was a part of Solheim. With the space constraints, that's been converted now into music. Well, the kids that exit music have to go through the middle of the gym in all of this. So you have a music class exiting the gym while lunch is happening, and it's funny to watch the two lines, and Mr. Flores will hold the music kids back till he gets a gap, and the kids going to sit down for lunch, and off they go. And it is really quite a feat to watch kind of the precision behind all of these moving parts during that lunchroom period. And it is, if it wasn't as organized as tightly as it was, you could see how that could become very chaotic very, very quickly. So with that, we kind of walked around the building and looked at some of the other spacing issues. One thing that I didn't fully appreciate either is Ms. Swanson mentioned 80 staff members. That's a lot of people in that building. Having been a student there, seeing what some of these spaces have turned into from my time there, what was the counselor's office is now their meeting room, and it's tight. There's not a lot of space in there. We went into what I would call kind of the network room. All the cables feeding in and out of that room doubles as an office. They've got people on top of people. What was the old computer lab has been totally repurposed for other uses too. The theme as we toured the place was, things are tight, but Miss Swanson said over and over again, hey, we're creative with our spacing, definitely efficient with their spacing, and they make it work. She goes, my staff make it work. She complimented her staff over and over again, and as a Solheim parent, I can agree. It is a wonderful community down there. So as part of our tour, we also went out. I wanted to see the portables, kind of see how those were set up. As we were out on the playground, one thing that we had heard about in relation to bell times was it being dark in the morning. Ms. Swanson talked about how we had a community partnership with our friends over at the Park District to turn on the hockey rink lights in the morning so that it lights up the playground enough so the kids can be outside running around in the morning. So I thought that was kind of a unique partnership that they were willing to do that for us. Given all the things that are happening in and around Solheim, that staff's been amazing, dealing with the stress that comes with having a school that has a lot of students. And part of the reason that it has a lot of students is because people really like that school. They want to live in that area. They want to go to that school, and that's a good problem to have. Again, Ms. Swanson couldn't say enough about her team and how they, manage the day-to-day stresses like all schools have, in addition to the number of students and how the different things they try to do to build community with what is a larger school. So I'm going to end with kind of a personal story. We walk around with these principals, and they always get hugs, right? You see it all the time. And maybe occasionally we'll get one. Well, so as we were walking down one of the wings, we happened to come around the corner, and my niece, Lottie, happened to see me at the other end of the hallway, and she beelined it, little second grader, beelined it all the way down to me and gave me a hug. And that was the highlight of the school visit is to get that hug. So I can see why principals kind of being the rock stars they are walking around the buildings, can inflate that ego a little bit, right? So that's my school visit at Solheim. Ms. Swanson, again, appreciate all the time you gave me that day so that we could walk around and see these constraint points and these spacing issues that you've been working with and your staff has been dealing with, and Mr. Hansel as well for kind of covering as Ms. Swanson continued to lead me around for what I'm sure felt like forever for her. So again, and the Solheim staff down there. Thank you guys for all that you do as a Solheim parent. We really appreciate all the work you guys do. So that's my Solheim visit. Item 7 is the consent agenda. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dr. Scheer.
Lee,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Presky,
Yes.
Eastgate,
Yes.
Hager.
Yes. All right, down to the superintendent's report, transportation and bell times. Dr.
Yeah,
Fosnot.
we got to some of the exciting stuff tonight. So I'd like to offer to you and the community, I guess, as a whole, my recommendations for the 26-27 school year in regard to bell times and transportation. And if you're okay, it might take 10 minutes, but just to walk through some of the key components and share them with you before we move forward. First of all, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to you. Thank you also to really, our change in bell time affected almost every citizen in this community to some degree. Unless you're not leaving your home, it doesn't matter if you were a parent, a staff member, or you were just reporting to work, right? All of our businesses had to affect that if you had anybody who had a child, there was some alteration in time. So the scope of the change we made was dramatic. I also want to extend some awareness. I know we had challenges. We all are aware of that, right? We've heard some of them this evening. And people let us know that, and that's appreciated because some things we weren't aware of unless people let us know. And that some of that awareness has been kind of brought into this report that I'm offering you in the community. Using that input actually was the basis of the recommendation. Parent input, parent survey input, phone calls, emails that I received, and what I'll share with you are just facts that we've been collecting as far as the efficiency of our systems and how it's been working. All are part of the recommendation I'm putting forward, and I hope you and the others that read this tonight can see that. It's really taking all that into one singular view and trying to make a recommendation for the future. And with that, we may make changes today, but that doesn't mean we are not making changes tomorrow or next year or a year after that. I think we had intentions going into this school year that materialized and they worked, and we had some things that didn't work. But we've also used good data to make recommendations for the future, because now we say, oh, we can make this adjustment. It can work if we tweak some things, and I think that'll happen in the future too. I think your questions about the transportation contract are reflective of that. We need to keep looking at the system, looking at this operational component of the district, and continue making tweaks into the future. And I'll share some of those with you. So if you get into the executive summary, that's just really an introduction page, not too much there. I'll leave that for people's reading at their leisure. And get into the background and the why. I just want to help remind people why. Why did we even embark on this journey that's now well over a year old from today? Remember, we had operational challenges. Buses that were not showing up on time in the morning or at night. We were doubling up routes. We had routes that just were inconsistent. And particularly, we had kids at our middle schools for 60 to 90 minutes waiting for their buses to arrive. That was really putting not only stress on our staff and our systems, but also kids and parents, because they weren't getting out of school and getting home the way they should be. With that, we also had a driver shortage, which was compounding part of the operational problem. When there wasn't enough drivers, and no fault to any of the operations, Harlow's included, when you don't have drivers, you have to now double up routes. You have to make routes shorter or lengthen them, and that day-to-day confusion caused a lot of stress for people. So going from 52 to 40, having 52 routes last year and only 47 available drivers just put a huge pinch on our work. And we knew we had to do something. And if you're going to help address driver shortage and try to compensate drivers more or help to increase their wage so we can get more drivers, we had to lean down our system. And I want to some people have asked me as of recently, it's like, well, you're not paying your drivers enough. You need to be more appreciative of your drivers. Since 2018, I don't know if I've shared this with even you, is the districts increased their driver pay by 22.9%. They've been really trying to increase wages for drivers over this time period. So we continue to work on that, something we need to continue to do. So if you go on to concerns and survey page, the next page, thank you, Mr. Barnhart. This page is trying to quantify the concerns we heard this fall. I've given a link to the stop criteria, which I've shared with the board earlier this fall, of the neighborhood stops and the criteria we're going to use to make sure that they're consistent, safe, and uniform across the district. But at the bottom, you can see a graph. We asked parents, like, are you satisfied with the current school start time for this year? We kind of got into that start time question, and overwhelmingly, it leaned no. We had struggles with start time. I want to characterize that, though, because a lot of times we've lumped that concern into elementary, because elementary start time was 7:50. When you look at the parent data, that really falls into two buckets: elementary, but also the lateness of middle school, because middle schools are pushed out to 3:50, and some of just getting kids activities and getting them through their practices, and to push practices later, I think on both ends were something that we heard in the parent survey. I also want to say, before I forget, within this document, you're going to see links to the parent and staff survey. So the summary documents that I've created for the board and the community are linked there. And if you want to go even deeper, if you're just a survey nerd, there's links in each of those summary documents so you can see every single response. Every line of the survey you can see in totality, whatever that may be. And so we provided full access to the survey documents. On the next page, page 5, concerns of the survey. This page really focuses just what the input from the parent survey that helped inform my recommendation to you this evening. You can see in the blue box, there's dissatisfaction with those start times across. Doesn't matter, again, if it's middle, high school, or elementary, or if you're mixed grades. I think it did impact all of them, even though high school really didn't tweak too much. I think that time really didn't change a lot going into this year. And we asked parents in the survey, if we could change elementary start time to 8 o'clock, would you support that? This bit of information definitely impacts my recommendation, because the majority, 55%, said yes, they would favor that change, and you'll see that in a little bit. Parents still wanted in the survey, they still wanted their system to be reliable. That was the most important aspect when they look at the services we provide, and they were not in favor of us adding increasing walkouts or charging for the service, even though the committee, and I know you, have talked about that over the course of the last months. They were not in support of that. If you go to the next page, page 6, I don't know if this page was really needed or not, but only because we had so many comments from parents inside of the parent survey, and I will also say even some in my staff survey, about go back to the root of what we were debating this time last year, is who goes first, elementary or secondary? And I know it was in front of our Operational Excellence Committee last year, and they brought forth a recommendation, elementary first. So I've tried to articulate what we went through last year again for parents and the public to understand the option that was given to us in option A and B was, again, elementary first or secondary first. And if you look at the elementary school, which is the purple line in both those graphs, you can see there are reality. We picked A, and that's what we did. Okay, a little minor tweaking at the middle school level, but that's about what we did. Okay, because of the difference in the instructional day, because a high school day is 7 hours and an elementary day is only 6.5 hours long, particularly if you look at the tail end of the day on option B, to get our routes to have at least an hour to run two-tier system, it artificially pushed back the start time for elementary, again, because of the difference in the length of their day. And what we were talking about this time last year with the help of Transpar was that would mean you would have to have like a 9 o'clock bus arrival, 9:20 start time for elementary. I want to just be clear. Everybody on that committee was like, for two reasons. One, both of our community partners that do childcare, neither one was wanting to do childcare in the morning and thought they would be an impossible task to man or have workforce at that time in the morning to watch kids before a 9 o'clock start or 9:20 start. And we just didn't think, as much as parents are concerned with 7:50, and they have been, we thought we'd have more parents concerned with a 9 o'clock start, when the vast majority of us are at work well before, 8 o'clock time frame. It just becomes very unique challenge. So I shared some thoughts about the order question again, and then I shared a little information about Stop Finder, and you heard that, you picked up on that tonight with from Dr. Scher about the new contract, some of the challenges we've had with the technology this year, which have had us stumbling and falling a little bit with the Stop Finder app, and really technology has been a challenge for us. And I think the new contract with Harlow's will help improve that. Reliable digital GPS on all of our buses with route-to-route turns, and those things will help us be more reliable and hopefully pass that information on to parents through our app next year better than we are this year. On page 7, I did share information from our staff survey and also just some information we gleaned from Power School. I shared the times that we're at now. People have asked, like, well, your teachers probably don't like this time either. Actually, the staff survey says opposite. Elementary, which is the gold bars, and secondary, which is the blue bars, are leaning more to the positive. They've been supportive. They like the new time change. But we're probably going to change it for them again. But overwhelmingly, elementary teachers have liked the time change, even to 7:50. People have asked about attendance and tardiness. You can see over the last 4 years, that's relatively unchanged. Minuscule parts of a percent. It really, through the Thanksgiving break for both previous years and this last year, to try to track that and see if that's had an impact. One of the things that was the reason why was that middle school pickup time, that's 60 to 90 minutes. We have dropped that down to 10 to 20 minutes after dismissal bell. And okay, you're out at 3:50, bump. We know it takes a little time to get to the bus. We are consistently in that 10 to 20 minute mark, and all buses are departed, like rolling wheels and out of the parking lot heading towards home. Okay, in this year's scenario, they'd drive by they're going to head out from the middle schools and get going, but on their routes. But that is a huge improvement over where we were last time, and all my middle school principals say that's consistently happening. So much improved. And lastly on this page, are students ready to learn? Again, that graph, elementary being gold, are they ready to learn? That is skewing towards a positive. They are awake. Even though we did hear on the staff concerns on the secondary side, particularly middle school, that kids are getting tired. By the time you get to 3:20, 3:30, kids are getting tired at the middle schools. And is there a way we can address that? So again, you're going to see that in my recommendations this year. By the numbers, again, kind of like when Mrs. Meyer was up, superintendents, we worry about the numbers. You can see the cost. Now, the bar graph only reflects 24-25. We're in 25-26. I don't have that number because we haven't concluded it. Our actual contract with Harlow's is down a little bit, but again, that's because we reduced routes. We cut some things, even though we expanded CT routes. But as you articulated, Board Member Presky, that's projected to go up $650,000 total next year from where we are sitting today. So we know there's expected implications for the budget. I would like to point out to people, I think I've shared this before, the state only reimburses BPS 19% of actual costs for transportation. The state's goal for regular ed is, they want to be in that 70-80% mark of reimbursement. In transportation, they're desperately lagging in that. Compared to the actual cost. I gave you, just for everybody reading it, I gave you route and driver information, so you have that. And then again, a little snapshot that transport analysis is on our website in great detail. You can look at it. But what we were hoping for in a 2-tier system was to see us picking up all those kids, getting them on buses and delivered to their school, and then a little bit of a gap before we went out and picked up secondary kids. That analysis was on December 5th, I believe, if I get that date right, remember. That's what we're seeing. It's working. Is it working perfect? Nope, but it definitely is. We can see it functioning. We can see it's emulating what we're striving to get to. So all that information really boils into my recommendations. I think that's what people have been waiting for and eager to hear. My recommendations for next year is to maintain the 2-tier system. we really as a district have no capacity to go back to what we had a couple years ago. To add that number of routes back in a world where we can't find drivers to fill them is the definition of insanity. There's no way to get back to that system and provide a reliable system that hopefully is at people's doors when we need it to be at people's doors and get kids to school on time. So the two-tier system is working. Does it continue to need refinement and maybe some adjustments? Absolutely. But the neighborhood stop concept, the two-tier system, I am recommending for next year to continue. However, with that, I am recommending time adjustments and bell time. We talked about some of these times last year in full transparency, but we didn't know how it was actually going to work. Transpar was saying you need X number of minutes to make this work based on your riders. You need to do this, let it run. We've let it run, and we know we've stressed some people with that. As we look at our times this year with real data, like tracking how it's working, we really feel like we can make 8 o'clock in the elementary division work. So moving our start time for elementary to 8 o'clock with a dismissal at 2:30 doesn't change the minutes, just adjust some 10 minutes. AM buses would run at the same time as they are now. We're just shifting that probably more for our parent drop-off time. Given our parent drop-offs are a little bit more time to be not so early in the morning before they're heading to work, and a little more logical time for them to drop their kids off. The other high schools are unchanged, and then you see middle schools. Middle schools made a dramatic shift. We've cut 20 minutes of instructional time off per day. That is a recommendation from our middle school principals. It's a couple minutes per period, and a little bit of their I'm thinking win time, but it's not win time. That's elementary. Thank you. So we're going to shave a few minutes off, but we can get middle school kids dismissed at 3:30. I think that's a concession by middle school, but also addresses what we've heard from parents. Like, we need to get kids out after school activities, and hearing from our educators that those get to be really long days. Kids are getting tired, and taking that into account. So both those are the dramatic changes for us. I did not make any recommendations for early childhood special ed or Head Start. Those board members are coming. We are not solidified on those times yet, so please know that that's something we have to continue to work on, and I'll inform you and the community later what we're doing with that, okay? Last recommendation Dr. Scher kind of hit upon was not only keeping our neighborhood stops, but also that concept of registered riders, actual riders. And what we are finding, the better our technology gets in our accounting of riders and actual riders, is we have a system that was built on the idea that you sign up for a bus. All the parents, you just sign up for busing. We're probably realizing more and more how many people sign up for busing as almost an insurance policy. So then when it's a really crummy day and maybe my kid got in trouble, I'm thinking of my own son, when he messed up and you're not driving your car there, Junior, you get to ride the bus for a week, are using it in that capacity. So we build routes, we fill buses based on signed up riders, when really we could be limiting routes, reducing routes based on actual riders. And I think that's something we need to look into, is how we can make the system more efficient and adapt more to actual kids riding buses on the fly during the year. So that's something our technology, as we've mentioned a couple times tonight, should help us with in the future. But I did put the cost in there because it came up at our operational excellence. Like, what does a seat cost? A seat for registered riders, $925 a year. But when you only look at our riders, and I'm looking at one day that Transpar did that is over near $1,400 per seat. That is significant. So ridership matters, right? So, and it does help us improve the system. So that's my recommendations for next year. I guess before I get into other considerations, do you have any questions over those recommendations? Okay. Future ones that we have talked about all year, you have talked about at the board table, operational excellence has talked about. A few things that I think are in the future yet, that and why I'm saying it could change next year, could change 2 years from now, is still considering charge for service. There are school districts that charge. They charge for in-town busing. They charge for out-of-town busing. Is that some model that we want to use within our system? And really, that's about driving ridership, thinking that if you charge, people are going to put their kids on a bus because I'm paying, right? And if you don't want to pay for it, you're going to find another way to school. And it's really about leaning the system down through the mechanism of charging. The other way to lean the mechanism down is walkouts. As I've shared before, West Fargo has much larger walkouts, the elementary and secondary level. You just begin to move your walkouts area where you are not serving those kids in that circle with transportation, and you push those resources out more into the edges of town or the rural areas to help serve those children, particularly when you have less and less buses and less drivers to do that work. I think that's something we can look at in the future. And I think it's been mentioned is, does this district, based on the reimbursement from the state and the challenges we're having, do you have busing in town at all? I think many people have talked to me about my age group, maybe a little older, say, we didn't have busing when I was a kid. It's something that's kind of a new thing, and should we be, because of the challenges of busing and reimbursement and transportation, be reverting back to what used to be the old model? And lastly, I just put a note about the technology. We've said it multiple times. I think the technology will help, and as we begin to improve technology and accounting riders and actual route runs and where they're going, we can become more and more efficient with the resources we have. And when you have limited resources, you have to become very efficient, and this will help us do that. So that's my recommendation for next year, and I'd stand for any questions.
Mr. Eastgate.
Yeah, thanks, President Hager. Dr. Frosnot, thanks for the presentation on this. Obviously, it's been, as you said, it's been something we spent a lot of time on. I sit on the Operational Excellence Committee, hold that portfolio now. I want to say, first off, thanks to all the community members that are part of that, as well as your staff. We have parents and business owners and a number of different people across the community that are helping give us some input on that. So I just want to say thanks for their time, because they're volunteering to be a part of that. And these things do get talked about at length from a number of different opinions and perspectives at that meeting. This last week we had a meeting, then we had our board workshop. This has been a document I've become very well acquainted with. But it's important that we get it out and communicate it. I just want to say, and I've stated at those other meetings too, I feel like the figuring out this busing has truly been a long process. And to pretend like we just have it fixed, I shouldn't say fixed, but that it's just perfect now, it would be wrong, because we don't. And the comment I keep saying is, if you've ever driven at all in North Dakota, that's not going to go away. I don't think it is. And so some of my comments have just been and I know it's just a recommendation, some options in the future. But when we talk about charging, I think the bigger issue is the ridership and just figuring that out. I think that's been addressed. I think the district knows that especially at the secondary level, how much fewer kids are riding the bus home afterwards. They either drive themselves, or even if they're registered for the bus, they're finding a friend or somebody to get a ride at the end of the day. So different things like that. But I still think it's important for the community in particular, as well as the board has had a chance to look at this, but to look at some of those different options, while still stating whether we charge or not, we're being as safe as we can be right now with where it's at. We are trying to have the best busing we can do. We're not trying to have a product out there that isn't. But roads in North Dakota can be tricky, and timing we're a huge district. We have a lot of variables that are beyond our control at times for how many riders are going to hop on that given day. And so I appreciate you looking at this. I know you and your staff have talked at length with Operational Excellence to the board through different surveys. And I appreciate that we're learning and that we're willing to pivot. And so if we're going to change bell times based on transportation, or because they do go hand in hand, that our district is saying, no, we're willing to continue to look at this and try to make it better for our parents. So thank you, and we'll certainly continue to keep working on this.
Ms. Presky.
Yeah, thank you. And I really do appreciate that we've stayed engaged with the public and asked for their input, even though, we knew that we would see a lot of that very dissatisfied come up in the survey. It's still good to hear from them and find out how we can make those improvements. So appreciate these recommendations. I think 10 minutes is 10 minutes, and moving it to 8 from 750 is more than likely going to make a lot of those elementary parents happier. I think it just does. It's a mental thing. going from a 7 to an 8 instead. As far as like options in the future, I guess I'm glad that we're at least putting it on the table and letting the public know that these are potential things that we'll have to look at in the future. I mean, we just approved a contract that's an 18% increase, all while being under a 3% cap. So we're limited in the amount of funding that we can increase every year, but then we have an 18% increase in transportation alone, not to mention any of the other increases that we have to balance. And so these other opportunities for looking at cost savings are something that we might have to look at. And I think it's really good to have it on the table so that the public knows these aren't easy decisions, but they could be a reality in the future. But again, also echoing that the enhanced technologies that'll be on these buses will help us make these decisions as well. So thank you.
Mrs. Peterson.
Thanks, President Hager. And again, I think everything that's been said has been really helpful. And I think that along the way, to Ms. Preskey's point, that there's, each year is going to be a different budget situation and a different opportunity. We're going to live and learn. We've actually only been 4 months into this current test as we're making, decisions for what it's going to look like next year. So I always just like to kind of point that. And even in those 4 months, there's been improvements and there's recognition that some things we won't be able to showcase that they've been improved until we roll it out again next year. But with that said, I think the public and as we kind of segue into the facility update, what we heard from President Hager's Solheim report and just these financial decisions, I think that at the end of the day, the reason why that this has still been something that we're even talking about is we want all kids to be in the building at whatever level that they're able to be, because we know they can't learn unless they're there, they're on time. We're able to get all students and families this opportunity. So it truly has been something, regardless of how much it's increased, regardless of what the state is putting into it, we've still prioritized it, but those priorities may change with different decisions. And so up until this point, even though we talk a lot about the logistics and the 10 minutes and so on, at the end of the day, I think that we've all recognized that we want to have opportunities for all kids, including in town, at all levels, whether you have a ride or not, to get to school. But when faced with some other budget, constraints, that may change. And so just want to appreciate the work that's went in by all of the community members that Dan said, but also just knowing that things are going to change with each year. And so not only with what the community wants and those personal surveys, there's also external factors that go into that as well. But I've appreciated the opportunity to reach out and do the forums, and that continues with the facilities conversation as well. So thanks for all the work and these recommendations, and look forward to kind of seeing the next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Frostnut. I know the amount of work that your team has put into this, the bell times in particular, and as Mr. Eastgate alluded to, there's not a perfect solution to this. I appreciate the continued reach out to the community that you've done and your team continues to do on this topic and others, and try to garner that input from them as we look to try to make things better. Every family has a different situation, and
Yes.
everybody has a different perspective, and those are the things that we try to balance when we make these decisions. So appreciate you and your team on this one.
Well, thank you. And I probably forgot, I appreciate Mr. Eastgate saying it, but yeah, the people who have been on operational excellence, thank you. I mean, if you're watching, I really thank you for your service. Thank you for giving us some of your time and helping advise us as we've done this for the last year. They've been a voice throughout, so thank you. I was remiss not doing that. To that, I guess we'd move on to the next thing. Dr. Scher would, on behalf of myself and him, would like to present to you our updated long-range facility plan. If you remember, months ago, you charged us with updating the plan and addressing some of the things, Mr. Hager, you were talking about tonight. So after our community forums and surveys about transportation or facilities, I think he's ready to share what we found out. So, Dr. Scher.
Thank you. President Hager, members of the board, you have 3 attachments. There's actually more on our website. I think the detail for each building's there. All the feedback that we receive from all the community members are there. Summaries of those are in these documents, the executive summary. But the first tab is just kind of the overview. And, we've had plans in this district. When I came in the district back in 2004, we had a plan that we were working on. We since have fine-tuned many plans, like our roofing plan and our carpeting plan and our parking lot plan. But in 2020 was the first time that we actually took a committee-based effort to develop the plan that became a supplementary document to our strategic plan. And it really provided a roadmap, because it's not only about the deferred maintenance or the programmatic, it's a guideline on how we move forward with class size, with boundaries, with everything. Before we did Elk Ridge and Silver Ranch, we essentially drove past buildings to go to other buildings. We don't have that anymore. We have truly what we can call neighborhood facilities in Bismarck Public Schools. So it's much more than just stuff that we need to work on, but most importantly, I'm here to say that this update, what it did is it validated the plan. We did go out and have many community meetings, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. So if we go next slide. So this one just really tells you, it reinforces our district commitment to strategic data-driven decision-making. And we just want to make sure that we've got same experiences, similar for all students. They shouldn't be able to have to, they should be able to go to any building and really have a great experience at Bismarck Public Schools. So if you go to the next one, this was the community engagement process. We went and we visited all those buildings. We asked the people that attended those buildings for their feedback. And then we had some folks that said, you know what, I couldn't make it and I'd really love to give feedback. So Dr. Fosnot opened it up to everybody. So anybody could allow feedback. We had some facilities that were okay attended, and we have others that were great attendance. So again, all that stuff is in there for you to look at. The engagement activities, I talked about the parent, but back with the principal. Also, Jason Middlestead and myself went through and said, okay, we've had this plan for 5-6 years. We updated it with the help of Mr. Hager in 2023. Now we have this plan in 2026. We have been able to address some of those things over the years. So we made sure that everything that we did was off of the plan. So we did validate all of that. So kind of what we heard from like on the district-wide themes is deferred maintenance remains a priority. The other thing is the programmatic and instructional space needs we need to address. Now I will say that there's some buildings that don't have any programmatic or deferred maintenance, and they shouldn't. Lincoln, Liberty, Elk Ridge, Silver Ranch are still fairly new buildings, right? But we have some, for example, Sunrise, where we have some minor stuff. It's green, right? But we have to look at flooring already. It's interesting because there's still some people in our community that think Solheim and Centennial are less than 10 years old, but they're 30 plus years old. I'm not trying to age you, Mr. Hager, but the things that we need to address, in my opinion, is we really need to address ADA. I mean, we have to get a handle on that. We have to make sure that those students that need the most help in student support services, do we have adequate facilities to do them in their neighborhood school? That ties to ADA also, so that they can get those services, the access to multiple floors, or even getting into the building. So they have that. The other thing that was loud and clear at a few of our sites was, just a simple traffic analysis. And are we doing it the right way? I will tell you, I'll just use Solheim for an example, because that's probably our hottest spot for traffic flow. Dr. Foster and I met with city leaders. We met with, and then my team and I went back and met. And what's interesting is even something as little as thinking about if we would reverse the flow at Solheim, what would that do? And it's like, that's actually a great idea, because what's happening now, when you come into that lot, what do parents want to do? They want to drop off little Darren at the front door. But guess what? They need to move all the way to the end, which is further from the front door. But if you flip it, guess what? Front door's at the end of the line. So that might be something so simple that could improve. But those are things that we need to further look at and address. And if we go to the next slide. So it really comes down to this. You have the long-range facilities plan. This is our recipe and map to move forward as far as facilities, right? I think the board needs to weigh all the deferred maintenance, some of the programmatic issues, and decide what are our next steps, and then provide direction. How do we want to move forward? How do we want to tackle these things? You know, we talked about in our workshop that we are not able to address these simply with our operational budget. That's to operate our schools, right? So we have to do something else. And we have some options. You have the building fund that could do some projects, but it's not going to be able to maybe check enough of the boxes for us to get where we need to be. So with that, I would answer any questions related to the long-range facilities plan.
I don't see any, Dr. Scher.
Okay. So go right into the financial
Keep
report.
on going, yeah.
Okay, so tonight, financial report, we got some good news and we got some not so good news. I'll tell you two things. I had a pre-meeting with Moody's because we have the certificate of indebtedness coming up to help our bowl project. It was a very good project, but it reminded me again, we talked about, you know, growing your ending fund balance and doing some of those things, but it was a very positive meeting. I anticipate we'll come out. We will learn on Wednesday what our rating is before that bond sale, which will come here for approval at our next board meeting. That will have that same rating. But the thing that's interesting is the trend that we're going with our ending fund balance is heading the right direction. And then even the good news for right now, if you look at where we're projected on revenues and expenditures compared to last month. Remember now, this is for ending of November, and you'll get ending of December at the next meeting because of how long it takes us to close the books. So we've not closed December yet. We will by the 15th. But you can see that we're trending in a positive manner, 1.8 over on revenues and 1.1 under on expenditures. So that's moving in the right direction to help build that ending fund balance. Now, for the not so good news is if you go to page 6 on the document, boy, we got that nailed down. I said I'd promise I'd get those page numbers on there, and we got them on there this time. So on page 6, if you look at the second line where it says building and site repairs, we budget $1.1 million to do that. And as of the end of November, you can see, we budget $1,040,000. We've expended more than that by $100,000. So it's really critical only type things, but this is not an improvement budget. This is the stuff that fixes toilets, and we did have one large. We had to do the chiller at Solheim, so that came out of this fiscal. But so that's the part when we think about moving forward with a long-range facilities plan. It's one thing to try to get those projects done. It's another thing to say, how are we setting up the future administration and school boards to say, okay, we need to do this a little bit different so that we do have more money to address those challenges. So that's really all I have for you on the financial report, and I'd answer any questions on the financial report.
Board members, questions, comments? I don't see any, so budget brief. Dr. Fosnot.
All right, last thing this evening. Sharing this with you before I ask Mr. Coons to share it publicly, and it'll go out on social media probably along with my proposed recommendations for transportation and bell time. Probably go out tonight, tomorrow. But did this the last couple of years, provide kind of a one-page simple explanation of the new proposed budget for the upcoming year, just so people can look at it and digest it. And so what I've offered you in here is kind of a picture where we are going to be tightening. We're going to be tightening our belts. It's probably nothing you didn't hear last year. I think that's why you're hearing this report from Dr. Scher. Revenues are doing better, expenditures are doing better because we're tightening. We're trying to make sure setting our priorities. But To Ms. Preskey's comments earlier, you can see the big 3% stop sign because that's new legislation. All public entities are facing that same challenge as we navigate taxation in within North Dakota. But when you have a 3% cap on growth inside of your general fund, that's the operating budget, and that's true in our building fund. That's true in a couple other of our funds that we use for collection. There's a limiter now that we have not had in the past. It just means we have to live in that reality. I think that puts setting priorities even more of a priority as we move forward. The other one is a little farther down, Mr. Barnard, is state budgets. State budgets this year and next year are already set as far as that reimbursement rate. That is 2.5%. And that is locked in. It's not going to change for another year. I think between the tax caps and the state revenue being particularly tight this next 2 years, and then we compound that with what we're projecting, a little over $500,000 in tightness in our federal budgets by just some projections we're planning for. All three of those constrict the revenue side of the budget, which means we have to constrict the expenditure side. So on the right, based on that, on the right side of the page, you'll see our projected revenue budget for next year at the top at $227 million. And then you also see the projected expenditure. Next year, we are sitting on the positive side, revenue over expenditure. I would tell you a year from now, that's projected to flip. So we have some work to do before we get to the 27-28 budget to get that on the right side of the ledger. But what I tried to project down there with the little school bus logo, a little farther down, Mr. Barnard, is really you look at the increased cost inside of the expenditure budget. $650,000 is really in that professional services line due to our busing contract, transportation contract, and the rest of it. If you take all that in totality, about 84% of the increase is really going all to salaries and benefits of employees. So when people challenge us, challenge me, challenge you with taking care of our people, so we retain teachers, we retain custodians, we retain bus drivers, I think that's what we're doing. We're projecting almost all of our new money into those salaries and benefits. And in a world where I can't increase revenue, I can't make money to help pay those people anymore. We're giving really almost everything we have to increasing those salaries and benefits. And just characterizing for the people, it really goes back to what we've already said 3 times. We got to identify priorities that have meaningful impact on students and then start saying that's where we're putting our money. And if it's not making heavy impact on students, it's not helping us meet the law, meet federal requirements, things like that, then we got to have hard conversations about them. So, and that's just our work. We got to do that all the time. So I'm just sharing this with you. Hopefully you like it. And again, we'll share this with the public so they're well aware of where our budgets are going.
Mrs. Peterson.
Thanks, President Hager and Dr. Fosnot and Dr. Scher for these important reports. And I think it's always timely when all of these things are taken in totality, along with the workshop that we've had, the committees that have gone on. And I think what I want to commend Bismarck Public Schools and your team, plus the taxpayers and everybody else, is that I think we've done a really good job of doing exactly what you said. If we want to make sure that we prioritize and we're looking at what our funding is and what it is not, we are able to kind of do things within the means, and we've really made some good decisions. We're going to continue to prioritize. We're looking at the programming that we heard earlier on in order to make that kind of a budget neutral, but also like kind of increase parent choice and parent opportunities, but do that in a budget neutral way. And I think that's been an important directive that those of us that have been elected have come to know. But I think it's also clear that when we look at anything extra, and I always look at the word and kind of chuckle a little bit at deferred maintenance and the thought that we had the long range facility in 23. Now we have it again 3 years later. And a lot of that stuff, yes, to Dr. Scher's point, is he's been able to make improvements, just really, chip away at certain things. But we are sometimes one, I don't want to call it a disaster, but one crisis away from a boiler going out or a roof caving in or something like that. These buildings are used. They are used with military precision, as Mr. Hager talked about with what we have to do at Solheim just to accommodate students in the space that we have. So to not acknowledge that not only that there is this growth that makes it really easy. When you're growing and your community is increasing, it's easy to say, well, we have to have a school because we have to put the students somewhere. I think these decisions are a little bit harder because we are stabilizing a bit in our growth, or although it moves and flexes kind of, with the growth of the community. But what happens is there are improvements that we would want to make. We would want that anything that you're getting kind of at a Solheim or a Wilmore is exactly what you could get at an Elk Ridge. And I think that those things we hear from our community, but in our current budget cycle, in the current, I don't want to call it status quo, but in the current just even funding that we're receiving, we're not able to do that. And we're not able to just slowly chip away at some of those pieces. And what's even more concerning to me is some of the more detailed things within the long-range facility. And I would encourage anybody that's in the public to actually read through kind of some of the specifics. There's definitely some wants in there, 100%. There's those things are going to happen just as we grow. But there is a lot of actual needs and ADA compliance issues and accommodations that absolutely can be and have been made at these local schools, but also ones that probably shouldn't need to be made. Students being carried up and down stairs, or students and families having to go to maybe not a neighborhood school and go to another school because it doesn't have the facility needs that another school does. So I think that as we make these hard decisions and we talk about what the community needs, and we've gotten a lot of input, I hope that is something that is taken into consideration. And as I look at this budget brief, I think that the state and local taxation has put us in a bind to capitalize on what we have and the decisions that we can in this moment. I think that what we are going to need to do and ask the public and ask each other about what we would go is, if we want those extra that's in that long range facility, we're going to have to come to the community and really hear from them on what we want to do to make sure that these schools are really the facilities that we want. And the last point, because I know that you guys will all have comments on this, is that if we think about just I know Dr. Scheer talked about traffic, the actual physical traffic that is coming in and out of our school buildings every single day to get kids in and out. And we've talked a lot about transportation. But the just foot traffic that are in our buildings, whether you're talking about a small school like a Prairie Rose, you're talking about the large elementaries like we did with Solheim, or our high schools that are just having just foot traffic in and out. I mean, these floors are walked on. There is students there all the time, adults that make these places their home. They've got to be these buildings. And I think that we've done a lot. I mean, I'm obviously a Bismarck High grad, so I know how old that building is, and just the tradition that we've had to keep a very strong programming in a very old building and have made it accommodate and with some of the improvements. But the everyday foot traffic that is in these buildings, I think we just have to acknowledge it. And some of the stories that when we talk to Darren and the facilities team, and you hear about just how much inflation has cost to make these simple repairs, I don't know if we're always able to acknowledge that when we're talking about just the basic needs and the technology that we need to make sure that students have. And all of those, we've just done it on kind of a budget neutral space. And I think we're going to have to be really honest about whether we can continue to do that and make sure that we're meeting those students' needs. So I know those are some conversations we're going to have in the spring, but I hope that the public is realizing that that doesn't mean that we're not still asking you guys to make good priority decisions on what we're doing with staffing and thoughtful things about the programming every single day. But some of that is going to be outside of that, I do believe.
Ms. Prisky.
Thank you, Board Member Peterson, because that really kind of set me up for my question as well. When you hear about the long-range plan, you see this budget brief, we're maybe $1 million over revenue from expenditures from what is being projected today for the next budget. So then you look at the long-range plan and you see the totals there. what are our options? And I'm sure we'll have those further discussions down the road, but I can tell the public that it's not because none of us want improvements at our schools. We want those improvements at the schools, but we've just had our hands tied financially by trying to be, conservative and in the budget process. But I guess I'll just end it there and see if you have anything you want to throw at us with that.
Let me reiterate to both your points. I mean, one, as I walk around schools, Bismarck has exceptional schools. Okay, we're blessed to have the facilities we have, but there's also day-to-day, week-to-week work. Okay, so 14,000 kids, 2,300 people, just work inside of it, go through buildings. There's a consumption, right? But even besides just the wear and tear, I think you have to recognize that, and I will pick on ADA, to come into this district and realize that we have schools where children and staff have been carried upstairs because there's no elevator to get to this bottom floor or the third floor. It's 2025. Really, that's what we're doing? I think you have to take a pretty hard look at that, and that's in the plan. I encourage people to go look, because there are some schools that really need some of those spaces to help ensure that every child has access to a similar standard of school education experience. I think you have, as Dr. Scher mentioned, some schools that are not even listed on the list, right? Because they're relatively new. They've been on the edges. They've been on where in the last 15 years we've seen a lot of growth. Those are beautiful schools, beautiful learning spaces with tremendous opportunities, not only for the children within those spaces, but the educators that are in there too. And I just would encourage people to think about some of the schools that are towards the center part of the town. Are they meeting the needs of their kids today? Yeah, but you can't compare those two. Those are really diametrically different. And I think the district has an obligation to invest in those schools as much as where the new homes are being built. We have an obligation for the kids in those neighborhoods as well. Now, to Ms. Preske's your point, yes, that number in that plan becomes a very large number really fast. Dr. Scher mentioned 1.4 million, right? We had in maintenance. We've consumed all that well ahead of schedule for the last 2 years. So just general maintenance is eating that away. The limitation, general fund is for general operations. It is to keep teachers in classrooms, custodians in hallways. It's to keep bus drivers in buses. It's to keep us operating. If you're going to use that budget to do some of the things that are on the facility side, you would maybe be making drastic cuts in programs that people would not want to see because of the cost it takes to keep the facilities up and going. You have a building fund. I remind people you've been levying about 10 mils in your building fund, which is about $6.5, $7 million a year. But you're also paying for a couple new schools out of that building fund. And even that, when you're talking about millions of dollars, we have been knocking some things off the list. Floors, additions, chillers, things of that nature, roofs. We're doing $300,000 a year just in roof work every year. When you have millions of square feet, not millions, how many square feet?
2.8.
2.8 million square feet of just floors and roofs to take care of. So I think, to your point, Ms. Presky, it's that we have to go back, look at the priorities within the facility work and say, we're doing that on the general fund side, but even the facility work, what's the priority list? What needs to be addressed most immediately? How can we fund it? Come back with you with options, saying we can do this within the building fund on a 3-year plan. We can do this within the general fund on a 10-year plan to maybe get this done. And some of these things, there is no plan besides we're going to have to go find another way to pay for that because it's such a large project over such a scope of time and space that there's just no way to do it. And if you chip off that work over 50 years, I'll guarantee you there will be another 50 years of work right behind it. So it's just a matter of setting those priorities and then asking people, what do you want to do? But some of the big things, as you mentioned, Ms. Peterson, I would tell you are stark absolutely right in your face things that the district needs to address for the learning spaces for some children in some parts of town.
Thank you, Dr. Fosnot. Thank you, board members. All agenda items have been considered. I declare this meeting adjourned.